So we are delighted, NYSAIS is delighted to have this opportunity to speak to Leymah Gbowee, a Nobel Prize winner, an extraordinary life and an extraordinary person who's just inspired heads at our Heads of School conference and has agreed to speak with us and answer some questions. And we're very grateful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I wanted to begin by just educating our audience, those who will be seeing this interview, to better understand what you accomplished and what the women of Liberia accomplished in the peace movement. And we don't have a lot of time, and that's unfortunate, but I wish you would sort of talk a little bit about how you changed, you and the women of Liberia changed Liberia and in so many ways the lives of the citizens of your country.
Well, basically we were in 14 years, in the 14th year or 12th year of our war, and we decided, a group of us, that it was important for us to step out and do something. We were, the way I describe it is that we were pushed against the war, and we had two options: fight back or succumb to the violence that had engulfed our entire community. And 7 of us decided that we needed to make a change. With $10 out of someone's purse, we wrote our first statement, published it in a local newspaper. What made it amazing was that we named ourselves. We did not go under any pseudonym or aliases. We named ourselves, and the next morning, everyone in the media wanted to know who these brave women were. And that was the beginning of the publicity locally about our work. And we just started from 7. We went to about 25 to 65 to 250 to 2,500. And in 2 years and a half, over 10,000 women in different regions across the country. So that's the story of the work that we did. But it was necessary for us because we had gone from a place where children were only conscripted when their villages were attacked, and we had come to a place where people were driving trucks into your yard and picking your 8, 9-year-old son, go to teach him how to fire an AK and send him to the war front. So the mothers decided it's time for us to really step up and do something. So that's the core of the work that we did at that time.
Just talk briefly about the outcome of this effort, because that is extraordinary.
Well, at the end of the day, we had done this work for a long time, beginning with mobilizing women and then protesting the violent dictator Charles Taylor. And at the end of the day, we were able to get them to sign a peace agreement. He eventually left the country. He's now serving 50 plus years prison sentence in the UK. But today, beyond the signing of the peace agreement, the women continue to work until we had elected democracy. As part of our work, we were able to see the election of Africa's first female president. And today we continue to do the work because Liberia now is in the midst of elections, and we're seeing tensions rise. The women are out again in the street. As a matter of fact, driving here, I was watching the live Facebook thing of their protest today in Monrovia. So we continue to do the work, but the one thing that we were able to establish was peace, democracy, but then that we also established a legacy for ourselves, that there will always be these women who will challenge any structure that tries to, tamper with the peace that we've worked so hard for. So that's the work we're currently engaged in.
So when you think back, or, it's currently happening because you say it's an ongoing struggle, what lessons did you learn in the course of this extraordinary movement and extraordinary outcome?
Well, the first lesson for me is that, sometimes people use different issues or different themes as weapons of division. For example, religion in our current time has become such a contentious word because people are using religion as a means of destroying communities. The one lesson is that you can use any divisive theme as a tool for peace. We use religion as a tool for peace. We brought together Christian and Muslim women to advocate for it because we recognize that when the bullets are flying, the bullets will not pick or choose a Christian from a Muslim. The rape and abuse that women were going through wasn't just Christian or Muslim women. Men were just raping. So we realized that we had to mobilize around our common humanity and not the things that divided us, like how we pray. That's the first thing. The second thing that I think is that our process was indigenous. It was local. We didn't have any expatriate come to show us. We rarely got any donor funding for the work that we did. We had taxi drivers, school students, school children coming and giving us whatever they could give us. So it was a grassroots initiative. Women who, a vast majority of them, may never get on airplanes to come to the US or other places. That is the beauty of the experience that we went through. Finally, I think the lesson that I can take out of that is that when you have a purpose, a goal, and you're focused regardless of all of the odds that are against you, you can push and you can make a change.
Okay. Well, I just want to ask you a question regarding the talk you just gave today, which focused on civic engagement and schools' responsibility and obligation in terms of the education of students. And I'm sure some of the lessons you've shared about your movement, which was so dramatic, have informed your understanding of what schools can do. And I wonder if you could share some of the ideas that you spoke about today.
Well, the one thing is that I think we have to get to a place where we become very clear about good and evil. You can't window dress evil. You know, for example, if one child is being bullied, and just because that child comes from underprivileged and he or she is being bullied by a child from a privileged background, it should not be tolerated, regardless of how much donations, you know, parents have brought or grandparents have brought to the school. The lesson I learned from that was that when we decided to do, and the reason I say that, is when we decided to protest the war in Liberia, the Taylor family were the most powerful people in Liberia. They could make your life good and they could make your life hell. But when we decided that we were fighting for peace and fighting for justice, it was important for us to move beyond personality and look at the issues. How do we translate that with young people in schools in terms of civic engagement? I think many times we fall short as adults. Oh, it's just a tiny thing. But if you study the lives of dictators, you realize that they started from childhood, being very bad to one person and then to another person. And the more it was tolerated, the more they were not being held accountable for their actions, the bigger it got, to the point that we see happening in our world today. So I think the first thing to do is to really state clearly that in this space, we stand for justice, we stand for peace, we stand for truth, and we stand for equality. And young children really and truly, they learn from what they see. So if you say justice, equality, peace, and truth in this space, they will be watching to see. And they will try your values. And if you fail to call them to order, at the end of the day, you get in trouble. That's the first thing. So within your institution, you have to establish your ground rules. And a lot of schools says, oh, these are the guiding principles and values of our schools. But how are you implementing them? The second thing is that most times people want to tiptoe around the critical issue. Oh, we don't think it's the best time to tell these children. But when the children step outside, they encounter these issues. So it's important for people to begin to inform them about some of the issues that they will face and how do they challenge those issues. Because as part of your civic engagement, you are supposed to not just sidestep, you're supposed to challenge issues as you face them. You're supposed to advocate for issues. You have to be a loud voice for some of the ills in society. So, basically, those are the things that I learned from my work. I was a loud voice. I'm still a loud voice, not just in my community, but in every part of the world. When I go to the UN, I'm never thinking about, am I getting invited again? There's one message, the message of truth, the message of peace, the message of justice. regardless of how difficult it is to swallow, I feel like we need to tell it because, like I said in a quote from George Orwell, you know, in a time of universal deceit, truth-telling is revolutionary. So it's time for a lot of us to get to the place where not just telling truth, but walking truth. It's important for us to do that. And I learned that from the work we did in Liberia.
So I'm going to ask you one last question. It's a little bit of a personal question. You are a mother of 8 children.
Yes, I am.
So how, you know, our families are part of the education. It's one of the great qualities of independent schools that parents participate in many ways in the education of their children. What advice would you give a parent facing, you know, their children are facing a difficult world, a world as you described that could be understood as upside down in many ways? How do you, as a parent, and what advice might you give a parent as they help their children navigate and live this life of great character?
Well, I would say that for me personally, I go to places, I see a lot of things, and I bring home the edited version of what I see. Edited in the sense that I don't go vivid in terms of the death and destruction that I see, but I tell my kids about some of the trials of the world. Beyond that, I tell them about some of the challenges, the humanitarian challenges that young people face. One of the things that I do with my kids is that I consistently ask, are you blessed or are you privileged? You know, and whichever way you answer, you could get a reward or you could get something else. But the point of asking that question is that if you say I'm privileged, the question to you is how are you using privilege to the advantage of those who are underprivileged? If you say I'm blessed, how are you maximizing your blessings for the greater good of someone else out there? So, and then if you say I'm blessed, then the next question for me or the next comment for me is that realize that there are many people who are worthy of God's blessings, and He's choosing you. He can take it back from you and give it to someone else. So my kids and I, we have these very critical conversations about life, about love, about hate, about justice, about different things. And sometimes they will call me, and I never ever project myself as knowing it all. I recently got 3 pages of very critical letter from a group of feminists who felt like my feminism wasn't projected well enough in some of the work that I do. And I was angry, I was upset because I felt like I was being targeted for nothing. So I sent it to my very smart daughters. Each of them professed to be feminists also. And they all read it, and we got on the phone, and each of them were telling me, you know what, you don't need to be upset because we don't see anything in this letter that is like damning. Someone is just trying their best, but just to be able to have that conversation that even as a Nobel laureate, I'm not above reproach. That's one lesson I think my daughters are learning, but that at my age and with all of my experiences, I can still come back to these young people and ask them, help me process this. The problem with most adults and with most parents, especially adults, is that we pretend to our young people that we have all of the answers. In order for young people to trust you and keep coming back to you with their problems, you have to make yourself vulnerable in order for them to be vulnerable to you. So for me, with my children, we talk about everything. And sometimes they say, oh no, mommy, too much information. I'd be like, I don't have a therapist. You are my therapist, so you have to listen to me. But I think adults being bold enough to be vulnerable to their young people, is something that we all need to do. I have honest conversation with my children about everything, politics, everything. These last few days, they've been observing me, be on the phone, be on the email, be on social media, just fighting and talking about the peace of Liberia. And when they don't understand certain things, they come back to me. And when I have a statement to write or something to do, I put it to them and say, can you help me process this? And they say yes. So I think civic engagement or helping our young people understand their duty starts from within, starts from home. We have to, if you don't know about your rights and what you're supposed to do as a citizen of a particular place, how do you teach it to your children? And if they learn it from school, how do you nurture it? So I think it's important for parents to also get to that place whilst we're asking teachers to do that, parents also need to up their game when it comes to some of these issues.
All right. Well, I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much for your time and for your wisdom.
Thank you.